Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clarity 15.9 supportability training, covering off on the common grid component usability improvements. Essentially, I've got three things we want to talk about today, which includes a demonstration. Multi-select delete. So from the common grid, users can now select multiple rows and delete them in a single action. This is the first of kind of bulk actions that you can perform from a grid. The second is providing color to fiscal period column headings in the modern UX. Essentially what we're doing is any grid configured to display per period metrics, or TSV data for the uninitiated, are assigned a unique color to improve visibility and readability. The last item on the list here is the assignments module itself is now available from the task flyout. So users can assign tasks to from the assignments grid in the task flyout. So I'll explain that in a minute. So why is this a big deal? So again, from an adoption perspective, multi-select and perform an action, and in this case, delete, is common capabilities that were available in Classic, and people expect that in modern UX. Color applied to fiscal period column headings. Users that have expressed or have requested the ability or some capability that's presented to them to help them visually distinguish multiple TSV columns represented as fiscal periods. Just help them discern them differently. If you recall, the financial plans module that's available in the modern UX automatically applies color to help you visually differentiate. So we're talking now here visually differentiate. So we're talking now here in the financials module and others that include per period or TSV columns now have some color to help you differentiate between the two. Now, from the assignments module being available in the task flyout, that really helps users assign work in the context of a selected task. So I can quickly isolate a task and see who's assigned or what roles are assigned or not in that flyout. So a little bit more detail. So from what's changed, so in the grid, this type of experience here, the select all, delete all, or this checkbox metaphor was available in other parts of the application, for example, roadmap import, or I should say hierarchy import. So we've applied them to other parts of the application. So it's a common grid now has been substantially improved to support, in this case, multi-delete. The next piece is color. Got some examples here of I'm in staff. I'm looking at allocations and hard allocations, and I can visually differentiate the different, in the per period section, the difference between the two. The image that's in the middle of the screen at the bottom here is the column panel. It too is going to have color if those attributes are selected using view options. So I'll show that in a second. Accessing the assignments module from the task flyout. Here's an example. In the lower part of the page here, for a project or custom investment task module, again, if I'm on a grid or a board or a timeline, I can bring up the flyout and access that simple grid, meaning it's got a smaller set of capabilities, data entry, anything you do with the columns to add them, move them, reorder them, group by, sorting, all that. Those are things that we refer to as the simple grid. If you want to look at a larger view of that same grid, you can click the expand button and get access to all of the capabilities that are afforded to a grid. Most notably export to CSV and that save view business. So you've got all that at your disposal in the context of the flyout for the task module. Those are the three things I want to focus on. I'll just kind of switch over to the application real quick. We'll talk about multi-delete. We'll look at the per period column header colorization, and then lastly we'll touch on the assignment module in the context of the task flyout. So let me come out of PowerPoint and go back to the product. Excuse me, let me bring up the product. Okay, so I've landed here on our project list page. I'm going to show you the multi-delete function in the context of resources. As you recall, this is where teams are set up today. The future of this area is to be user management for the modern UX going forward, but today it's the team organization. So I'm going to come in here to the information team. You'll notice there's, in the bottom left here, there's 102 users across 2 pages. Just happens to be the 100 user design here. You'll notice at the top there's a select all function. If I touch Terry Walker, it tells me how many I've selected, and I get a few more options to delete or deselect. Adding a couple more, right, it just keeps incrementing and tells me what's going on, and I can delete them. I can do a select all, right? I've got 100 items selected. I can just hit delete, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? And it'll do it. And so I'm just going to confirm and blow away those 100 users. And as expected, there's 2 left, right? It didn't cut across the page and delete all 102. It only took those from the page. That is, you know, the essence of the bulk capability. Not all grids allow this capability in this release. I'll discuss that in a little bit later in the session today. So let's move on to the next grid usability improvement, and I'll talk about the how fiscal periods or TSV columns include a color to help users visually distinguish multiple columns from each other. So I'll come back to our project grid. Our project list. And I'm going to go into this particular project, and I'm going to select the staff module. So I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the monthly allocations metric has a color, and it's already been positioned in the grid. So colors are automatically applied by the system in the order in which the per period metric is selected. So I go in, how do I do that, right? This hasn't changed. I go into view options, I pick per period metrics. At this time, for staff module, there's 2 available options. I select that, and it being the second choice is positioned in the grid in second position and automatically applied another color. In this example, I can quickly get to the fact that it tells me that, you know, for the first 3 months of this project, a lot of work has been booked, you know, hard booked, right? People are committing their resources, their time to this project for at least the first 3 months. Hard allocations start to fall off right here in the 4th month. So that's kind of what I would expect. But with this colorization now, it's a little bit easier for me to differentiate between the 2 columns. One other thing, let me come into the column panel here. I'll scroll to the bottom because that's where the totals are. They also have a color applied to them if they're selected using view options. So this is a fairly simple example. In this time, I'm going to move on to a next feature, but real quickly, I wanted to cut over to financials. You actually saw this really quickly when I went here to talk about total units and total revenue. But you can see here that in the per period metrics, they've got unique color assigned. If I come into view options, my selected items are here. Let's just say I add cost variance to the per period metrics. Notice I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 items here. It's going to add another cost variance, and it's going to pick another color. So they don't technically mean anything. there's no mapping performed or defined, but the system is going to. Okay, so that's TSV or per period metrics getting some colorization. I showed you an example of staff and financials. All right, let's switch gears and move over to our last feature related to the assignments module, but using it in the context of the task flyout. So I'm going to go into this particular project. I'm going to select tasks. I'm going to come to the timeline. I'm going to highlight this guy here, change, scope change, and bring in the flyout. So I'm seeing a few more entries here across the flyout. Some of this will be covered by Vib in day 2, but I'm going to focus on assignments. So you can see I'm selected here a single task, and I see the roles and or resources or teams, in this case it's resources, assigned to this task. As I scroll through on the left, I'll just use my down arrow to continue. I can see assignments in the terms of a specific task. As I hit a phase or something that doesn't support assignments, I will get this message here that tells me, hey, this task doesn't support assignments. Thank you. So let's go back. Now the simple grid, right? We talked about being in here in a simple grid. Of course, I can expand this as much as I want, right? But typically that's the default flyout. I can go through here to see all the various columns that are presented. Simple grid functions. I've got my, I can group by, I can do all this stuff. I can sort, etc. I can add columns, right? I can add additional columns. I can do data entry where fields, if it actually allows me to do so, I can do that. So a lot of power right here to be able to perform assignments, assign roles, resources, or teams in the context of a specific task. Now, where's my save view capability? Where's my export to CSV capability? So there's a new expand button here that brings up a modal that allows you access to all of the grid capabilities. Export to CSV, filtering, adding additional per period metrics, right here, or setting various aspects of the grid. And of course, save view. So if I save a view here, let me just add ET, and I'll add, sorry. Actually, that's not a good one. I forgot. I want to add percent expended. So let me add that, and I'm going to save that view, right? I could have used save as, but I didn't. But now I've got this view. I'm going to close, and it's going to be the view that is presented here, right, in this grid as I navigate through. It's independent and separate of save views up here. So I'll go back here real quick. So notice I have my standard view with per period actuals. That's my view. As I come back to here, I don't have that. I don't have that view. So by design, the view that you're using to control data in the assignments flyout grid is separate, independent. If I change something here in this modal and save it, it applies to this grid only. And if I, add, something else here, something else here, it applies only to this particular view. Notice the only thing I want to point out is I've got assignments here, right? That's typically a module. It's not deployed up top. So they can be, it's independent, and actually the user doesn't have any control over hiding or suppressing the assignments module from the flyout. Of course, you via Blueprint, you can control the assignments or any other module being presented in the top line here on the navigation. Okay, so that concludes the demonstration of the accessing the assignments module in the context of a task.